Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and in today's video I'll be sharing the latest stamps, dies, stencils from Hero Arts. As usual, there's tons to share, so I'll just jump into the card making and I'll show you those new products along the way. First up is the stamps and dies from the main kit. So I cut out the die out of gold mirror cardstock and took that window out, and now I'm using the stamps to stamp a sentiment right in the center where that frame would be on some white cardstock. So these are gorgeous sentiments. They have script and leaves and all types of fall elements to them. So I'm using a little bit of anti-static powder tool and then Versamark ink on that stamp so that I can heat emboss it. One of my favorite embossing powders is the gold glitter embossing powder from Hero Arts. So I'll cover that sentiment and then tap it off the excess and heat set that, and you have both the gold embossing powder and glitter involved. Here I'm using two of the Hero Hues inks, and I'll ink blend around and on top of that sentiment so that some of that window will be covered up with yellow and orange ink. These are really pretty colors, and I ended up using a lot of yellow, orange, and red for this card kit and the add-ons this month because everything is related to fall, and so those warm colors are so nice to use. Just put a little bit of tape runner behind that frame, and then I actually trimmed it down so I could mat it on some craft cardstock as well, and then gold pearls from Hero Arts as little accents. That's a super easy version of that stamps and dies. Here we're going to use the stencil as well, and the premium kit also involves another stamp set and dies, so we'll use those too. I have the craft die cut piece on my grip mat from Waffle Flower, and I'll place the stencil right on top. Since the stencil is larger than an A2, it will stick to the grip mat. The cardstock sticks to the grip mat as well, and then I can use some more of those Hero Hues inks. They work really well on top of craft cardstock, whereas your die inks will sink right in and they'll look muddy. You can see the yellow really pops off of that craft cardstock because it's a specialty ink that can be ink blended and kind of sits above the paper a little bit, but does not take an eon to dry the way that pigment inks can. So I'll just ink blend a couple of colors. I have that yellow and the orange. For the red, I didn't have any Hero Hues, so I did grab a dye ink. Now this is such a deep dark red that it is able to show up on the craft cardstock. So I'll just ink blend a little bit of that on top for those mushrooms, and then some Distress Oxide and Gathered Twigs for the stems and for the little pine cone there, just as accents. And you can see that you'll also be able to color in the veins of the leaves this way. And here it is, just another card with lots of warm tones as well. So I have that sentiment. That's actually from the stamp set that comes in the premium kit with these little foxes that you'll see in a minute. So I'm going to stamp and heat set that, but this time I'm going to use white cardstock so it really pops off of that dark brown. I'm using white embossing powder so it really pops off the dark brown cardstock. And you can see there that the sentiment says, "Let's dance like the leaves in the wind." And so I have the little fox that is playing guitar, and I'm just doing very basic coloring, so I'm not going to show you any blending or shading or anything like that. I just colored him in because I wanted to get this card done. And with all the stenciling and coloring and heat embossing, this one was taking a little bit longer than that first card for sure. I did use a light warm gray on the outside of this die cut image, and that's because I didn't want the white to be so bright here. I wanted the white to be bright for the sentiment, but I wanted the fox to look a little bit more natural. So I'm using my precision glue press to get a little bit of liquid glue all around the back of this frame. You can see there are some elements that are die cut a little bit more. You could pop those up if you want. think it also just looks good as an outline for those elements, and then pop up that fox in the front. So this is a really fun fall kit filled with lots of elements. So for this card, I'm using the add-on Tree Stump Fancy die, and it comes with the die cut of the tree stump, a little grass, some mushrooms, and a couple of other little elements that you can place around that tree stump or coming up from the center of the tree stump if you'd like. I'm using, again, that ultra fine tip for my liquid glue so that I can place the glue just at the base of those grass. The tree stump is popped up on some foam adhesive so it stands out from the back. This way I can place some of those elements behind it. And then I used the white pearls to add little white dots to the mushrooms. And the flowers are from another Hero Art set called Bold Flowers. Next up, this is the Acanthus Bold Prints stamp. It is a cling-mounted rubber stamp. I'm using it inside my original Misty, and I used it with that same Hero Hues yellow ink that I used before, and it is a gorgeous background. It is so much fun just on its own. I almost didn't want to put anything on it, but I decided to use the Hero transfers. There are pumpkins and leaves and little mushrooms. They're so easy to use. It actually comes with a little popsicle, but I find using my bone folder I'm a little quicker with. I don't know if it's just because I can hold it a little bit easier, but if you don't have a bone folder, don't worry. They put a little popsicle stick in there. The thing that's great about these is that you can layer them on top of each other just the same way you would do with stamps, but with no masking involved. You don't have to worry about masking, which is kind of the bane of my existence because I always forget what's going to be in front, what's going to be in behind, and I always mess it up. So these make it really, really simple to put things in front of each other and to have that look of dimension, even though everything is very flat to the card. I did trim that down to 4 by 5 1/4 so I could mat it on some gray cardstock, and then I have a sentiment, and I'll stamp that with some black pigment ink just to make sure it really pops off of that stamped background. Again, I love that Acanthus. I've never heard of Acanthus, but now I know, and it's beautiful. These are the Ginkgo leaves pattern bold prints. I have heard of Ginkgo leaves, so these come out really nice. I decided to stamp and heat emboss these in gold embossing powder to give it a subtle look on the craft cardstock. I didn't want it to be really the focus of the card, and I wanted to put something in front of it, and I didn't want to be left like I was with the Acanthus where I didn't want to cover it up. So I think these look really pretty as a subtle background, especially on craft cardstock. I think if I had done it on white, it would be a little more stark, and I would definitely worry about it being a little busy with what I'm going to work with on top. So this is the little fall gnome fancy dies. Comes with the gnome and then a bunch of accessories. So you've got pumpkins, a little lantern, leaves, and more. And then the sentiment is from a stamp set that I'll use later in the video, and also has a die to cut that out, which was very convenient. So now everything can get popped up off that background, so it really even turns out a little more subtle than I would have thought originally. So I don't know why I think this gnome looks so good with the Ginkgo leaves, but I really like the way he turned out with this background. And then I'll just use some foam tape and some liquid glue, so some of my accessories are flat to the card and some are popped up. That gives you those layers of dimension again that look really nice. And again, the reds and the yellows and oranges just look so much fun. This is the Leaves and Swirls stencil. I am working on an A2 piece of cardstock, and the stencil's a little bit bigger, so I have that and the cardstock on my grip mat. This time I'm using another Hero Hues color to color in these leaves and stems in green. And again, it makes a really pretty subtle background. This stamp is from the Hello Fungi bundle, and the little guy is from the Happy Gnomes bundle. There are lots of gnomes in that one stamp set, and there are lots of more mushrooms in the other stamp set. I decided to combine the two together because I thought the little guy would look fun standing against these large mushrooms. So I'm coloring them in similar colors and then cutting them out with their coordinating dies. Then I'll pop up the mushrooms so that they kind of bounce off the back of that card, and then I'll pop up the little gnome as well. Super simple, but really fun to put all these elements together and see how well they all work together in this kit and add-ons. I really adore these fall designs from Hero Arts, and I am looking so forward to fall. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the comments below. YouTube thinks you might be interested in checking out this video next. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. It was actually a lot faster than I thought.